The first thing I did after being reborn was to break off my engagement with Ethan Lewis. In my previous life I had spent most of my years exhausting myself for Ethan, but when I was bedridden with illness, he couldn't even wait for me to pass away. Behind my back, he was already planning a grand wedding with Lily White. Their wedding coincided with my funeral. This time I refused to be so foolish. While Ethan was busy breaking ties with the Lewis family to avoid marrying me and was running to the White family to serve Lily and her mother, I went straight to the Lewis estate. Emily, marrying into the Lewis family was your grandfather's last wish. It was also a marriage arrangement decided long ago between our families, Mr. Lewis, the family patriarch, said as he pulled out a yellowed marriage contract. I read it over several times, my gaze eventually landing on the man standing behind him. If I have to get married in half a month, then I'll marry him, I said, pointing to Liam Lewis. When I declared that I wanted to marry Liam, the entire room fell silent. Mr. Lewis looked utterly shocked. Emily, marriage isn't a joke. You and Ethan were promised to each other from birth. You grew up together as childhood sweethearts. How can you suddenly refuse to marry him and instead say you want to marry Liam? He wasn't wrong. Since childhood, I'd known that I would grow up to become Ethan's wife. For 4 years my greatest wish was to marry him, but he never loved me. In my previous life, Ethan only married me because of the Lewis family's arrangements. On our wedding day, the first words he said to me were, "Emily, since you insisted on marrying me, be prepared for me to never love you in this lifetime." At the time, I thought he was just angry. Surely over time feelings would grow. I refused to believe that after all these years he felt nothing for me, even after our marriage. I hoped his indifference would eventually melt away, but I was wrong. After we married, Lily moved to the south and became an unforgettable regret in his heart. Even when we were in our 60s, Ethan would sit in his study staring at the love letters he had written to her in his youth, silently weeping. Before I died, he coldly told me, "If it weren't for the promise I made to my grandfather, I would have divorced you long ago and married Lily. You ruined us." It was then I realized he didn't just fail to love me. He hated me to the core. He even went so far as to hold a grand wedding with Lily on the day of my funeral. This time I will never repeat that mistake, Mr. Lewis. I'm not joking, I said firmly. When our families arranged this marriage, they only specified that I was to marry someone from the Lewis family. There was no rule that it had to be Ethan, was there? Liam Lewis was Mr. Lewis's youngest son, born when he was over 50 years old. He was only 5 years older than Ethan. In my previous life, Liam left the Lewis family and moved abroad after Mr. Lewis passed away. I heard he never married. My impression of Liam was vague. He was a quiet and reserved man, always mature beyond his years. Unlike Ethan, he didn't seem to carry the burden of unrequited love or secret infatuations. If I had to marry someone, I might as well choose a man who could treat me with mutual respect. That was far better than a marriage filled with resentment. Mr. Lewis sighed. When he saw my determination, he said, "You make a valid point, but we still need to hear Liam's thoughts on this." Liam stood tall and composed, his white shirt impeccably pressed without a single crease. When I noticed him furrow his brows, my heart skipped a beat. In my haste to escape Ethan's nightmare, I had completely overlooked whether Liam would accept. But to my surprise, Liam finally spoke. "As long as you've thought it through, I have no objections." Hearing this, Mr. Lewis immediately broke into a smile. Great. Then the wedding will proceed as planned. In half a month. Everything at the Grand Horizon Hotel is already arranged. I told you I won't marry Emily. Before Mr. Lewis could finish speaking, Ethan burst through the door, anger radiating from him. He shot me a look of utter disdain before turning to his grandfather. Grandpa, this is the modern age. Childhood betrothals are an outdated feudal tradition. If you don't let me marry Lily, I'll never come back to the Lewis family again. Mr. Lewis slammed the table in anger, his response drowning out the radio playing in the background. How many times do I have to tell you? A woman like Lily, who had a child out of wedlock, has no place in the Lewis family. Do you have any idea how much ridicule my old comrades put me through because of your behavior? You're embarrassing this family. Asterisk. Ethan, utterly blinded by his obsession with Lily, refused to tolerate anyone criticizing her, even if it was his grandfather. Asterisk. I don't care what you say. In this life, I'll only ever marry Lily. If you don't approve, I'll move into the dorms at work and never set foot in the Lewis house again. Asterisk. As Ethan stormed past me, he sneered venomously. Asterisk. You can go ahead and complain to Grandpa all you want. It won't make a difference. I'm never going to marry you. You'd better give up on that idea. Asterisk. It turns out Ethan thought I had come to the Lewis estate to pressure him into marrying me. Little did he know, my greatest wish in this life was to stay as far away from him as possible. Don't go after him, Mr. Lewis called out to the butler, taking a sip of tea to calm his frustration. Asterisk. He's spoiled beyond reason. If he wants to sever ties with this family over a woman, then let him stick to his word. Asterisk. Ethan moved out of the Lewis estate and into his dorm at work. At the school cafeteria, I often saw him with Lily. Some colleagues who were close to me voiced their indignation. Asterisk. Emily. It's bad enough that Mr. Lewis brought Lily into our school as a substitute teacher. Now that they're planning to get married, they're practically inseparable. Anyone who doesn't know better would think she's the one marrying him. Asterisk. I merely smiled faintly and continued eating my lunch, not bothering to respond. What? A colleague asked, leaning in closer. It doesn't matter, I replied softly, shaking my head. I wasn't about to stir up any drama before marrying Liam. For Ethan and Lily, they no longer had anything to do with me. Since I wasn't marrying Ethan, I had no reason to stay in the new house Mr. Lewis had prepared for us. Out of sympathy, he had allowed me to live there alone because it was close to the school and in a safe neighborhood. Now that things had changed, I decided to move out. But when I returned to pack my belongings, I found them tossed haphazardly into the hallway. Asterisk. Miss Taylor, you're back. I'm so sorry, but Ethan asked me to move in with my daughter. There wasn't enough space, so I had to put your things in the hallway for now. Asterisk. Lily stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, dressed in a floral print dress, her posture exuding the air of a hostess. Asterisk. You know how crowded these apartment blocks can be. Ethan couldn't bear to see us struggling, so he asked you to move out. I hope you don't mind the inconvenience. Asterisk. In my previous life, Ethan had done the same thing, bringing Lily into our new home and forcing me out. Back then, I had been devastated, heartbroken, and demanded answers from him, screaming and crying about why he would let another woman sleep in our home. His response: cold, mocking laugh. Asterisk. We're not even married yet. When did you get the right to dictate anything about a Lewis family property? Asterisk. This time I felt nothing. Without a word, I quietly began gathering my belongings. My silence seemed to unsettle Lily. You're not jealous? She asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Aren't you afraid Ethan will end up marrying me instead of you? I looked up, my gaze cold as ice. A dog and a match made in heaven. Lily's face turned red with anger as tears welled up in her eyes. Who are you calling a? She screamed. That moment, Ethan appeared. Seeing Lily crying, he immediately jumped to conclusions. Asterisk. Emily, all she asked was for you to move out temporarily. Did you really have to bully her like this? Or is it that you're just after the Lewis family's money and can't stand losing your meal ticket? Asterisk. Ethan's arrogance and self-importance were unbearable. Once he made up his mind, no one could change it. I didn't want to waste another moment entangled with them. Without a word, I turned and walked away. I could still hear Ethan shouting behind me, his voice sharp and relentless. Asterisk. Emily Taylor, a woman like you doesn't stand a chance of marrying me. Don't even dream about it. I'm not going to the wedding in half a month. You can count on being humiliated. Asterisk. After moving back to the employee dormitory, I avoided any interaction with Ethan and Lily. Still, rumors about the two of them flooded the school. Every time I passed by, I could feel the pitying stares from my colleagues. A week later, the principal summoned me to his office, looking grave as he gestured to a letter on his desk. Miss Taylor, someone has filed a report accusing you of plagiarism during the teacher writing competition. This is a serious matter, and the higher-ups are paying close attention. The accusation came out of nowhere, and I felt completely blindsided. Principal, every single word in that article was my own. How could it possibly be plagiarism? And who exactly did I plagiarize? The principal sighed, clearly frustrated. The accuser provided drafts and outlines as evidence. Even if I wanted to suppress this, I can't. I think it's best if you take a few days off while this is being addressed. The words hit me like a thunderclap. Numbly, I stumbled out of the office, only to see Lily standing nearby, a smug smile curling her lips. In that instant, everything clicked. Most of my belongings had been left in the new house. Other than Lily, there was no one else who could have taken my drafts to accuse me of plagiarism. It was you, I said, glaring at her. Lily didn't even try to deny it. Seeing that no one was around, she smirked. Yes, it was me. So what? It's your fault for leaving your things lying around. My hands trembled with anger, but Lily only looked more pleased with herself. Emily, you took my man, so don't blame me for taking your job. If you don't leave, how am I supposed to get promoted from a substitute to a full-time teacher? So that's what this was all about. As I was about to argue further, the principal called her into his office, leaving me no choice but to file an appeal. However, when I brought the matter to the higher-ups, they told me, we already have proof that your work plagiarized an original submission. All you can do now is wait for the decision. The decision came quickly. I was fired. The principal told me that if it weren't for my prior contributions to the school, they would have made an example of me in a public disciplinary meeting. How laughable. The real author was expelled while the plagiarist basked in success and received a promotion. That same evening, Ethan held a celebratory dinner for Lily's promotion. I wasn't invited, but I went anyway. When I arrived, I picked up a glass of wine and poured its contents directly onto Lily's head. Gasps filled the room, and Ethan grabbed me, dragging me out of the restaurant. Emily Taylor, are you insane? Just a teaching position. Lily is a single mother. Do you know how hard her life is? Can't you just let her have it? If you still want to marry me, stop making things difficult for her. So Ethan knew all along that I was the one who had been plagiarized. In fact, it was likely that he was the one who helped Lily fabricate the evidence. Without thinking, I slapped him hard across the face. Ethan Lewis, you make me sick. Don't worry. I wouldn't marry you in 1,000 lifetimes. Ethan, however, dismissed my words as mere spite. In his mind, he was so certain of my devotion that he believed I could never truly let him go. I thought he would never admit fault, let alone apologize. But 3 days later, Ethan did something I never expected. He came to me to make amends. Emily, Lily just wanted to stay at the school so badly that she acted impulsively and took your drafts. I'm here to apologize on her behalf. After being fired, I returned to my old apartment in the crowded tenement block. When Ethan came to see me, he looked uneasy, standing in the bustling courtyard. Lily's been reported for getting her position at the school through backdoor connections. I admitted to pulling some strings, but Lily has the ability to hold her position, doesn't she? The moment I walked into the fabric store, I wasn't expecting to run into Ethan and Lily. I had just picked out a soft blue fabric, something different from Liam's usual white shirts, when I saw them by the counter. Lily was clinging to Ethan's arm, pointing at the exact same fabric I had chosen. "Wrap this one up for me," she told the shop assistant with a smug smile. I felt my mood sour instantly. The fabric that had looked so appealing moments ago now seemed dull in her hands. Without saying a word, I quietly slipped the coupon back into my pocket and turned to the assistant with a polite nod. "Give it to her," I said simply. "Some people just enjoy taking what others don't want." Lily bristled like an angry cat. "Don't act so high and mighty just because you can't have him," she snapped. "You didn't seem so dignified when you were chasing after Ethan like a lovesick puppy." I glanced at Ethan, raising an eyebrow as if seeing him for the first time. "Charming, isn't he?" said coolly. Ethan, who had been silent until then, suddenly looked tense. "Emily Taylor," he sneered. "Don't think you're so special just because you married my uncle. You only managed that because of that old marriage contract. Lily's different. She loves me for who I am, not for my family's money." Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a flicker of hesitation on Lily's face, but she quickly masked it. She leaned sweetly on Ethan's shoulder, smiling like the world revolved around him. "You know, we should thank you, Emily," she said with fake warmth. "Without you, Ethan and I wouldn't have ended up together. We're practically family now. When the baby arrives, don't forget to come to the celebration." She gently placed a hand on her stomach, her expression glowing with what I could only describe as performative maternal joy. It was obvious she was trying to provoke me, trying to use the baby to secure her place in the Lewis family. I couldn't help but smirk. "And here I thought dogs might change their ways," I replied. "Is having a child out of wedlock supposed to be something to brag about? A few years ago, both of you would have been thrown in jail for this." With that, I turned and walked away without another word. True to form, it wasn't long before Ethan started pestering Mr. Lewis again to let him marry Lily. But his grandfather was firm. "I've already told you," Mr. Lewis said coldly. "As long as I'm alive, that woman will never set foot in my house." The next day, my wedding to Liam went off without a hitch. Guests were initially surprised when they realized the groom wasn't Ethan, but the prestige of the Lewis name kept any awkward comments at bay. Instead, they offered polite smiles and warm congratulations. As Liam and I made our rounds, toasting with guests and accepting well wishes, Ethan arrived late, accompanied by Lily in a long red dress. It was exactly like my past life. Back then, Ethan had disappeared on our wedding day, turning me into a laughingstock. If it hadn't been for Mr. Lewis stepping in, I might have broken down entirely. And just like before, Ethan had brought Lily to the ceremony dressed similarly to me, standing boldly by his side. A humiliation I had swallowed in silence once. Not this time. Ethan's eyes widened in shock when he saw Liam beside me, dressed as the groom. "Uncle Liam," he stammered. "Why are you wearing a groom suit?" Liam raised an eyebrow, calm as ever. "Because I am the groom. What did you expect me to wear?" He paused, looking Ethan up and down. "But look at yourself, reeking of alcohol, still in yesterday's clothes. What kind of impression are you trying to make?" Ethan's expression froze. "What's going on? Isn't today my wedding day?" he demanded, his voice trembling with disbelief. Mr. Lewis chuckled bitterly, slamming his cane against the floor. "You didn't want to get married, didn't you? Well, now you've gotten your wish. What are you complaining about?" Ethan shook his head in frustration, then turned sharply toward me. "Emily Taylor," he spat. "Did you say something to Grandpa and Uncle Liam? Did you pull some kind of trick? I knew you couldn't be trusted." Before I could respond, Liam stepped forward, placing himself protectively in front of me. His voice carried an unshakable authority. "Emily Taylor is not someone you can address so casually," he said. "Based on seniority, you should be calling her Aunt." Ethan stumbled back in shock, nearly knocking Lily off balance. Ethan's eyes darted to her, clearly hoping for support. "This is wonderful," Lily exclaimed, her face lighting up with hope. "If your grandfather isn't forcing you to marry Emily, then we can finally get married." Her words practically screamed her ambition to marry into the Lewis family. But before she could finish, Mr. Lewis snorted derisively. "Not just anyone can marry into the Lewis family," he said icily. "Ethan, if you want to bring in a woman like her, It'll only happen over my dead body. Lily's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she bit her lip, unable to accept the humiliation. "Ethan, you promised to marry me," she whispered through gritted teeth. "How can you let your family insult me like this?" Ethan hesitated, caught between Lily's pleas and his grandfather's ironclad stance. The surrounding guests began whispering among themselves. "Isn't she that girl from the White family?" someone murmured. "Didn't she run off with some man years ago and come back pregnant? I heard her parents were so furious they passed away." Lily flushed bright red. With a cry of frustration, she stamped her foot and ran out, covering her face with her hands. Only then did Ethan seem to snap out of his daze. He turned to Mr. Lewis, demanding, "Why didn't anyone tell me the groom had changed? Why wasn't I informed?" Mr. Lewis glared at him, his tone icy. "I called your school multiple times, but you refused to answer, thinking I was forcing you to come back and marry. I even sent letters, but you returned every single one." Ethan's face turned ghostly pale. He stood frozen, unsure of what to do. In the end, he chose to chase after Lily. Fortunately, the unpleasant disruption didn't affect the overall flow of the wedding. That evening, I sat on the bed, draped in bright red sheets, my face burning as I finally voiced a question that had been bothering me. "Was it you who reported Lily to the higher-ups?" I asked quietly. There was no one else who could have intervened so decisively. Only Liam had the power and connections to ensure Lily was removed from the school. Liam nodded, his expression calm as always. "You married me," he said simply. "I won't let you be wronged again." He paused, then added, "I've also spoken to the school. If you want, you can return to teaching whenever you're ready." His words warmed my heart. But this time I hesitated. It wasn't because I'd have to face Ethan at work. In my previous life, I worked there until retirement, only to realize I didn't truly love teaching. "I'd like to try applying to a newspaper instead," I confessed, voicing the thought that had been on my mind. I worried Liam, like many men, might disapprove of his wife working outside after marriage. But to my surprise, he simply said, "Do whatever you like. If that's what makes you happy, go for it. If it doesn't work out, I'm here for you." Encouraged by his support, I carefully slipped my prepared manuscript into a narrow slot on the mailbox. If the submission was accepted, it would give me an edge in the newspaper's interview process. As I walked past the department store, I suddenly remembered that Liam seemed to own nothing but white shirts, so I decided to pick out some fabric for him. Little did I know that simple errand would lead me straight into Ethan and Lily again. The moment I poured that wine over Lily's head, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just anger, it was finality. Like tearing the last page out of a book I never wanted to read again. Ethan dragged me outside, his grip tight, his voice sharp with disbelief. "You really are pathetic," he spat. "You can't even handle losing." I looked up at him, rain beginning to drizzle around us, and for the first time in years I didn't feel anything. No longing, no regret, just clarity. "I'm not losing," I said quietly. "I'm choosing to walk away." He scoffed. "From what? A job you ruined yourself. A future with me." I shook my head. "From you. From all of it." And I meant it. By the time I returned to my small apartment, I had already stopped thinking about them. There were still boxes unpacked from when I moved back, but instead of feeling defeated, I felt oddly free. I sat down at my desk, lit a single lamp, and opened my laptop. I typed out my story. Not just the plagiarism, not just Ethan and Lily, but everything. My past life, the decades of quiet suffering, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the endless cycle of hoping someone like Ethan might finally love me. And then, the second chance. The moment I chose Liam Lewis, the quiet man who never promised me passion, only respect. I posted it anonymously on a popular online forum. Within days it went viral. People called it the most honest account of unrequited love and self-discovery they'd ever read. Journalists reached out. Editors wanted to meet. Out of nowhere, doors started opening. Not because of Liam, not because of anyone else, but because of me. When Liam came to visit, I told him what happened. He smiled faintly, folding his arms. So now you'll write. He nodded. I think I will. He didn't ask if I wanted his help. He just said, let me know when you need an editor. A few months later, on a crisp autumn morning, I walked into the newsroom of one of the top newspapers in the city. Not as a teacher, not as a wife looking for status, but as a writer with my own column. As I passed by the window, I saw a newspaper stand below. The headline read, Ethan Lewis resigns amid scandal. School accused of covering up plagiarism and nepotism. Lily's name was right there beside his. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I simply kept walking. Because this time my story was just beginning.